Welcome to this lecture. In this lecture we are going to be looking at estate duty, but we are also going to be looking at the income tax and capital gains tax implications of death as a quick little bit of revision. So, before we start going into a bit more of the detail, I want to discuss a couple of things that we're going to be looking at. Right, so you are born, and at some point in your life you will pass away. Now, there's a couple of things I want you to understand from the start around this. Let's just get that out of the way. So let's say here's Mr. X. Mr. X passes away. When Mr. X passes away, he stops existing as a taxpayer and a new taxpayer starts existing called Mr. X's deceased estate. So let's talk about that concept first. When you die, you can't be a taxpayer anymore. But there are still things that relate to you and pertain to you that needs to be wrapped up. But let me sound less cryptic. When you die, you've got assets. Got a house, got a bank account, right, let's say you've got a car, furniture, etc., etc., etc. You've got liabilities. You owe the bank some money for your house, you have clothing accounts, whatever the case might be. Now, that stuff doesn't just disappear when you die. Something needs to happen with it. The creditors still need to get paid, and your assets need to go to someone. Now, where do you? Let's first talk about what happens to the assets. The assets need to go to someone. Now, who does it go to? If you've got a will, a last will and testament, then you can tell people where it should go to. I want my house to go to my child. I want my car to go to my spouse. I want my bank account, the money in my bank account to be split equally between all my children. Whatever the case might be. That's the benefit of having a last will and testament. If you don't have that, there is a law, the law of interstate succession, that says how the money should be distributed. First it will go to your spouse, then to your children, and so on. But that's not something that you have to worry about in your syllabus. They will tell you what happens. But I want you to understand, your assets need to be disposed of. Your liabilities need to be settled. Now, how do you settle your liabilities? Who does this? Because, I mean, you're gone, you're dead. Your deceased estate, they will appoint a person called an executor. Not an executor, guys. Two very different things. An executor. The executor is a representative taxpayer of a deceased person. So it's the deceased estate. This executor has the responsibility to make sure everything happens. Well, you can say who the executor will be. There will be some requirements from the courts, so they might have to have a co-executor and so forth, whatever the case might be. But understand that there's an executor. The executor is some person who is responsible for sorting out your stuff. The executor will go and pay your liabilities, and the executor will take your assets and give it to the people that need to do it. But now, practically what happens? Your liabilities are 200,000 rands. Your bank account, you've got 30,000 rands. Your car is worth 100,000 rands, and your house is worth 1,000,000 rands. Okay, so what happens? So in your will you say, my house must go to my spouse, my money in the bank account must go to my oldest child, and my car must go to my youngest child. Let's say that. Okay, just for the sake of it. But your liabilities are 200,000. So they'll use up the 30,000 rands, but then it's gone. Then the executor will have to sell these assets. So the executor will have to figure out what's the best way of doing it. So the executor will probably sell their house there, so there's only one asset that's disposed of, and generate that income, and then give that income to the person who should have gone to. So what I'm trying to say is, you might put things in your will, but it's not always possible for it to happen exactly like you want to because of your liabilities and situations that might change. But in an exam, they will tell you what happens. But now I want you to quickly understand what happens. And just as a reminder, what happens on death. Mr. X dies. The moment that he dies, Section 9HA kicks in and says there's a deemed disposal of your assets at market value. right? So there's capital gain consequences for Mr. X. They treat it as if it happens immediately before he dies. Mr. X is then treated as if he sells it at market value to the deceased estate. So the deceased estate buys it at market value, so it has a base cost. The executor will then take these assets and either give it to a spouse, sell it, or give it to some other beneficiary. And there are tax consequences for all of those. You've already studied it under Section 9HA, right, but you understand that. That is the one thing that happens, that's income tax. Why do we also have this deceased estate? Let's take this money in your bank account. Now, let me actually explain to you like this. Let's say the death happens on the 15th of August. How long do you think it takes this executor to pay the liabilities and sell the assets and do everything? It can take anything from a couple of weeks to years. So let's say it takes 3 months. So August, September, October. So 15 August to 15 September to October to November. So let's say like that, right? It takes this amount of time. Now, this bank account, there's money in that bank account. That bank account earns interest. It doesn't stop earning interest when you die because it's still in the bank. That interest needs to be taxed somewhere. You can't be taxed because you've passed away. So it will go into your deceased estate. And there will be and that's why it's a taxpayer. You might have a business. What if you had a flat that you rented out to people? After you die, it still earns rental income that goes into the deceased estate until it's been transferred to its correct person. So that's why we have a deceased estate. It's so that we have some sort of legal entity, body, that will wrap up your tax affairs. Now, when you die, we also have estate duty that kicks in. Estate duty is a tax that happens when you pass away. Then it has to be paid. It's calculated at a flat rate of 20%, but recently they've also changed it to say that if your dutable amount on which duties are payable, that's what it means, exceeds 30 million, then that excess is taxed at 25%. So let's say your dutable amount, and just for now, just pay attention that the term is dutable amount, not market value of assets or anything like that. You'll see what that means in a minute. Let's say the dutable amount is 35 million. The first 30 million is taxed at 20%, and the remaining 5 million is taxed at 25%. And this is the same type of rule that we see for donations tax. And that is very deliberate. The reason for that is donations tax was invented to stop people from avoiding estate duty. Because I go, okay, when I die, there's assets in my estate, I don't want to pay estate duty on it. Why don't we want to pay estate duty on it? Because there's liabilities here. Remember I said when a person passes away, one of those liabilities will be estate duty. So the bigger your liabilities, the less assets can go to your family. So you don't want to have massive tax, obviously you don't want that. But now, so what would people used to do? Right as they're lying on their deathbed, they would say, all of my assets, I'm donating it to someone. And when they donate it, then when they die, there's no assets left because they've donated everything. That's why they invented donations tax and say, okay, well then we'll catch you there under donations tax. And donations tax is more expensive, basically, because there you only get 100,000 rands exclusion, but for estate duty, it's a lot more. Now, estate duty is not an income tax because it doesn't relate to income. It's a tax on wealth. It means it's a tax on the value of your assets. It's found in a separate act. So, guys, it's not a schedule to the Income Tax Act. So it's Section 3, Section 5, Section 6 of the Estate Duty Act, not Paragraph 3, Paragraph 5, Paragraph 6. Please also make sure, just pointing out to you in questions, if you are required to discuss both income tax and estate duty, make it clear to the examiner what act you are referring to when you're referring to sections. So read the act, also make sure that you look at your SAICA RTC examinal pronouncements to make sure what sections you can leave out. There are a lot of sections that you can leave out. Okay, so You need to know the income tax and the estate duty consequences. Income tax, we've already studied previously. This is just revision like we've said. This is a little bit of a catch-up here again. Please remember, there are two taxpayers involved. Like I gave an example now, I said Mr. X dies and then Mr. X deceased estate gets created. There's two taxpayers, Mr. X and the deceased estate. They can ask you for either one of those or both. So you need to know which one is which. They have different consequences. And then you need to know estate duty. So like I've already explained, you are the taxpayer, and when you die, all of your property and liabilities goes to the deceased estate, which the executor will then have to sell or look after. The executor can charge a fee of 3.5% of the value of the property under his control. I don't expect you to have to calculate this in an exam situation, guys. It's not really that much part of your expected syllabus. They should give it to you, but just understand the concept here. You get paid 3.5% of the value of the assets that you have to administer as an executor. What assets do you administer? The ones which you are responsible for transferring to a beneficiary or selling. So where there's nothing else or no one else that takes care of it, or no law that takes care of it. So for example, if you have assets, the person dies and have assets in South Africa and assets in America. In America, there will be a separate and a different executor working on those assets. So you can't claim the 3.5% value of that. But they should give this to you in the exam. So again, guys, the executor has the responsibility for the properties and the liabilities. For the property, they'll sell it or distribute it to beneficiaries, and liabilities will have to be settled. Right, so this is just the same that I showed earlier. The taxpayer is the taxpayer until the date of death, and then it becomes the deceased estate. You calculate tax as normal while the taxpayer is alive, and when the taxpayer passes away, we refer to section 25, which basically just says it should be taxed in the deceased estate. Watch out, guys, for when you die, for your tax rebates, it needs to be apportioned, and capital gains tax on the date of death, section 9HA, needs to happen. And also remember that there's an annual exclusion of 300,000 rands on the date of death. When the deceased estate calculates the tax, there's no rebates available for the deceased estate. That's the primary, secondary, and tertiary rebates. They also do get an annual exclusion though for CGT purposes, and that annual exclusion is still 40,000 rands, just 40,000 rands. A couple of other things I want to quickly just discuss and point out and remind you of rather here. If you had, if this taxpayer had a lot of second-hand cars which it sold as a second-hand car dealer, the second-hand cars would be trading stock for it. So those second-hand cars that are still left for the deceased estate, if the deceased estate gets rid of it, it's still considered trading stock. If it was capital for the taxpayer, it's capital for the deceased estate. If it was trading stock, it's trading stock. Okay, so it retains its identity. The deceased estate is just wrapping things up. Right, so just a quick comment again, guys. These are those rebates that we see in section 6. Please remember, you only get it for the period that you're alive, and you have to apportion it for the number of days. And then, just as a reminder, this is section 9HA. So, remember, the taxpayer dies and is then treated as if it sells all of the assets at market value to the estate. So that's one calculation and one taxpayer. Treated as if it sold everything at market value to the estate, except for the transfer to the spouse. Okay, that is treated as if it goes directly to the spouse, or that is treated, you still apply section 9HB there for the spouse. In reality, it should first go through the executor and then go on, but I want you to remember this, you still just apply section 9HB, so what you studied previously there, that's still applicable. So you treat it as if you sell it at market value to the estate. So the estate is treated as if it purchases it at market value. Okay. If the executor then sells it, you use the actual selling price, and the base cost is the market value at the date of death. Why? Because the estate was treated as if it bought it at market value. If it's transferred to a beneficiary, the base cost is still the market value at the date of death, but the proceeds will also be. So let me explain to you quickly what this means. So, date of death. Right, so let's say the date of death is 1 August 20x8. And the date the asset is sold by the executor, let's say, I'm actually just going to use the word disposed by the executor, is 15 September 20x9. Okay, so more than a year later. And the market value at this point in time is 5 million rands. So Mr. X, so let me just, for my example, Mr. X dies on the 1st of August when the market value of an asset is 3 million. Let's say the base cost for him here is 2 million. Now sitting in the estate, the executor then sells it more than a year later for 5 million. So when we do the CGT, Mr. X will have proceeds of the market value on the date of death of 3 million rands, and the base cost will be 2 million rands. Right, so there's a million rands capital gain. When the executor sells it, the proceeds will now be the 5 million rands. And what is the base cost? The base cost is whatever we sold it to the estate for, the market value on the date of death, which is 3 million. So there's a capital gain of 2 million. Now what I want you to see here, what is the total capital gain that we've then made? The total capital gain is 3 million, which is exactly correct because we sold it for 5 million and the original base cost is 2 million. 5 minus 2 is 3 million. But what I want you to see is important is that the million rands is taxed in Mr. X because Mr. X can only be taxed until he dies. So this gain, because the market value is 3 million here, can you see the market value increases by 2 million rands between these two dates of death, between the date of death and when it's sold? That is after the date of death. That must be taxed in the hands of the deceased estate. Okay, but if the executor here, when he disposed of it, if he disposed of it to a beneficiary, then instead of the proceeds of 5 million there, you would ignore that and you would say, what is my base cost? 3 million. Okay, that's the market value on the date of death. That is also my proceeds, so there's no capital gain. Right, so then the capital gain is only 1 million. Why do we do that? Because if this beneficiary decides on that same day to sell it, then that beneficiary will calculate the proceeds of 5 million and have a base cost of 3 million still, because that's its base cost. So the beneficiary will have to carry the CGT. So all I'm trying to show you here is the Act has been designed in such a way that the person who gets the benefit of the capital gain is the one that gets taxed on it. Right, so that's why these rules exist here.